Cthulhu Jack.
Before the Pussycats, there was Motorpsycho from 1965, shot, written, and directed by the one and only Russ Meyer. This film was such a hit at the time, Myers decided to create a female trio which spawned Faster Pussycat, Kill Kill.
Why do you bother with her, huh? She's a nothing but trouble.
So let's head out to the Mojave Desert once again with Russ Myers and his band of 5 army buddies to follow Brahmin, Slick, and Dante, best described here by Mrs. Maddox herself.
Honey, they were just 3 wise guys trying to be big men.
We first open with Frank and his wife at a watering hole.
Stop that.
She's looking for a little more attention.
Why, you little...
From there, we go right out of the gate with a catchy tune and 3 hooligans as they tear across the California desert on their way to Vegas. Deciding to take a beaten path, the 3 come across a fishing Frank and his playful wife. Now, what some of you may or may not know about a Russ Meyer film is that a man and a woman's age gap is typically portrayed quite wide in most cases, as you'll continue to see.
And you're 4 times worse in the sack.
Ranch! You talk about this sack.
Brahmin, Slick, and Dante oogle over the sunbathing session until they make their move. As the brass swells in the soundtrack, so does the violence against Frank, taking him out and then taking advantage of his wife. We then meet up with our main protagonist, Corey Maddox, a veterinarian played by Alex Rocco,
Might pick up a few pointers yourself.
who you all may remember as Mo Green from The Godfather,
How are you, Mo?
and his wife, played by Lane Carroll, who appears in a later George Romero film, The Crazies. As Maddox makes a pit stop at a client's house, his wife decides to take a walk. Of course, the Motorpsycho gang, fresh off their previous debauchery, hone in on Mrs. Maddox, encircling her like sharks. I wonder if director George Miller had seen this film or had been a fan of Meyer's work. There are closely related sequences between this and scenes from 1979's Mad Max. After Mr. Maddox appears and knocks Brahmin on his keister, revenge sets in his eyes. Mr. Maddox is called out the next day to Mrs. Fennon's ranch.
Just because some wealthy 6 machine thinks my husband's the only vet in 3 counties.
Gail ain't kidding. This is the first shot introduction to Mrs. Fennon, and nothing says heat in the desert like an hourglass figure. This is intercut with Gail Maddox being forced to dance with Dante, as Slick decides to call his mom.
Hello, Mom.
We also learn that Brahmin is a Vietnam vet that recently came back. Both of these scenes colliding becomes increasingly uncomfortable, which ends with Maddox coming home to an ambulance at his house. Russ Myers himself plays the sheriff, and man...
Oh, take it easy, Maddox. We'll find those 3 lover boys.
As the ambulance speeds away, we pick up another vehicle to follow. We meet Harry and Ruby Bonner,
I need you like a hole in the head.
played by Coleman Francis, and the once again spicy sex pot herself, Haji, who you all remember from Pussycats. As Harry begins to fix his flat tire, Brahmin and company arrive. Well, you can guess what happens.
Let's go.
Slick decides to pop the old man to add murder to their stacking charges. Ruby doesn't take any sass from the trio and bolts into the desert, but not before Brahmin takes her down with a single shot. Leaving Ruby to die, they fix that flat and make tracks. Maddox miraculously comes across Ruby and her husband. Hauling her along for the pursuit, Maddox and her chase the gang into the desert mountains. They eventually get a flat tire from Brahmin, who fires on them, leaving Maddox to be bitten by a rattlesnake, with Ruby having to suck out the poison. The trio flees until Slick decides later to split, but is put down with a well-placed pop to the noggin, as well as that annoying radio. With the remaining 2 men heading into the mountains, and Brahmin's PTSD ramping up, Dante also dusts up and heads back to where Ruby and the hallucinogenic Maddox are camped out. Ruby ends Dante during a tussle in the dust, while Maddox wakens sober the next morning to discover a corpse and a distraught Ruby. They continue on to find Brahmin. I'll leave it there, dear viewers, to not spoil the explosive ending. Motorpsycho came from an era of outlaw biker movies and drive-in exploitation fodder of the time that sold like gold. Meyer's photography is top-notch even when the script gets hard to watch. So if you're in the mood for a bad boy biker gang exploitation flick with spicy women, then check out Motorpsycho. Until next time.
Better find me a man, not some smelly old crumbum.
Love is for Lovecraft this February, 25% off store-wide at our Etsy shop. 158 5-star reviews with 440 sales and counting. So click links below to be notified. Many thanks for the support, and Hail Cthulhu!